Welcome to Holistic Health Heroes, here to help you become your own health advocate and introduce you to some heroes in the holistic health arena. Let's get started. Well, today I'm sitting here with Sharik Peck. He is a physical therapist by trade, but he's also founder CEO of Rezzimax. And for over 33 years, Sharik worked to help people eliminate pain from their lives because he himself has had quite a few pain, disabling accidents to overcome, pain-filled, I should say. And so this drove him to seek out some natural solutions to pain. And he focused his research on resonance and its effect on the nervous system. So after 15 years of research and development, he invented the Pain Tuner Pro, found at Rezzimax.com. So welcome, Sharik.
Thank you. It is such a good honor to be here with you, Kiri.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to dive into this. As you know, I've been sharing a few videos here and there on Instagram as I learn more and more about the Rezzimax. But, I always find it so fascinating to learn from people and their life experience, their story. And I know you have quite the story of different pain, things that you've gone through that have been full of pain, a broken back and neck for one, but lots more than just that. Could you sort of share with the audience a little bit about why this is so important to you because of, first and foremost, I think your personal story, your personal journey.
Well, I'm happy to share that. And it started out at a very young age. 2 years of age, I was dropped on my head and broke my neck.
Wow.
I spent the first 6 or 8 years of my life with my head kinked off to the side, and we never completely understood why. But through better and better imaging later on, we found out that it had fractured my odontoid process. That's a little projection on your second cervical vertebrae that allows your head to rotate. And not having that there causes me to be the original wobblehead. I don't have very good stability in that upper cervical region. Fast forward a few years, and I broke my back in another accident on a three-wheeler. A few years or 2 years after that, I suffered a stroke. And the stroke was caused because I was wrestling and I got caught in a headlock. And when you compile the fact that I had instability in my upper cervical region, got caught in a bad headlock, you can see how that separation there caused a rupture of a vertebral artery. And
Wow.
it was at that point that I got to learn how to learn again and how to walk again and talk and feed myself and write, and all kinds of things started back at ground zero
And how
after
old were
having.
you at that when that happened with the wrestling?
I was 17. I was just after my junior year in high school.
Mm.
So you can imagine how that changed my life. For months, I couldn't even drive a vehicle or do anything that required, well, I wasn't completely there. I wasn't completely aware of my surroundings, and I appreciate that's a good reason to not be behind the wheel of a car. But I spent years in the recovery process from all of these injuries. Um, but after kind of recovering, I made it my life's work to try and go back and help everybody else with their own issues and problems and injuries and illnesses. And so I became a physical therapist and loved helping people get back on their feet again, just like
Mhm.
I had been helped.
Yeah.
But over the years, I've been studying this chronic pain thing and trying to understand it better. And I've had chronic pain all my life. I just haven't, I mean, I thought everybody has all those trigger points in their neck from trying to keep their head straight,
Right.
um, and jaw issues and everything else that goes along with that. Um, but I've been trying to figure out how to be able to help people with that. Those were the impetus behind the start of Rezzimax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rezzimax is just a funny way of saying resonance therapy.
Okay.
And the Z's in Rezzimax are because improved sleep is the first thing that we can do to help a person get their nervous system back into healing mode.
That is so true. Yeah, I've actually used that. Through my whole life, I've never had any issue with sleeping up until recently, some challenges with falling asleep. So I immediately that was one of the things that I used it for, is to just go to sleep with it at night, like I tuck it between my body and the bed, just on my side or something, just to have it get me into, I think, that parasympathetic more easily. Is that how, it works for the piece of people you're working with?
Yes, we actually do have to train ourselves to get back into that healing mode. And that's in part because the world is screaming by us at such a fast rate these days. And we forget, if we've been in a high state of fight or flight or anxiety or concern and worry, or just simply speeding by everything at such a fast speed that our eyes are taking in so much information that it can't process everything all at once. And all of that massive amount of information causes our nervous system to not calm itself down very well. We
Yeah,
call that, that anxiety mode or that panic mode that the nervous system is going through. It does not let us get into the rest and the digest state of the nervous system very easily. So
right.
we're on a mission to help people learn how to sleep better again and eliminate the extra pain that they have, and be able to experience all that life has to offer.
Yeah,
Because it's an
that
amazing world too.
that reminds me, one of the things, that I sought out at first a few years ago, when I noticed I was having more anxiousness than I was like, what is this? This is not me. Like, where'd this come from? And so I went to an acupuncturist. So and I was introduced to the Rezzimax by a chiropractor. Shout out to Dr. Waldo in Naples, Florida, for introducing me to the Rezzimax. But I was wondering, you know, since acupuncture, I think, helped me with the rest and digest phase, and I know that you're in touch with chiropractors, that's a huge audience for you. Are acupuncturists also becoming aware of Resimax? I think it would be a good fit, or maybe it is already.
It's a great fit, and we do have a number of acupuncturists that have found these tools are such a huge help, in part because you can place those needles specifically to get the messaging to the brain, but you still fight the upregulation of the nervous system that makes it hard for the perfect messaging to the brain to fix all the problems.
Right.
In other words, you can get a perfect balance and harmony of the nervous system through the acupuncture, but then you walk out and you have to cross a busy street, or you pull out into traffic and you've got to go 75 miles an hour on the freeway, and all of a sudden your nervous system is back into that whole state, and it's undoing all of the great work that was done in the chiropractic office, in the physical therapy office, in the acupuncturist's office.
Right.
And so one of the reasons our tool has become such a powerful tool is because it teaches the nervous system how to find its balance again, how
Hmm.
to pull up that rest and digest set of the nervous system, and teaches it how to access that eventually without even needing the tool. It is a true tuning device. It teaches your nervous system how to find that calm rest and digest state.
I love that. The fact that if you work with it enough and you're retraining your whole nervous system, that you might eventually not even need it. So, what a great thing that is for people to know. I think that, yes, you want everyone to be aware of it, but hey, if you're using it right, then maybe you'll work your way out of needing such a device.
That is truly our hopes, because if you are needing our device just as much as people are needing their medications, what have we really fixed?
Right.
Our goal is to help you get to the point where you only need to grab it once in a while for a tune-up,
Yeah.
but your nervous system is functioning at a higher level, where you're sleeping better, you don't have the chronic pain you're dealing with, your body is much more efficient at fighting off the bad guys, the things that are trying to make cancer out of our organs, that your body can fight those things off and do a much more efficient job.
Mm.
And if we are successful, then you only need to grab it once in a while when you've had a particularly rough day, and your nervous system just learns how to be stronger.
I love that. I have to ask you because I don't know if this is relevant for you at all, but when I found the Rezzimax and I was like, oh, it's vibration. Oh, what does that make me think of? That makes me think of Nikola Tesla. So I had to ask, like, that quote from Nikola Tesla that says, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So how much, if any, was that an inspiration for you?
Actually, quite a bit, but I even went more simple than that. I just looked at what can we find in nature that's an evidence of proper functioning, and it's that balance of the energy systems that has to do an awful lot with vibration. In particularly, we use the purring range of a cat.
I love that.
And we've done a lot of research into the cat purring harmonic range, and we took that purring range, that happy purr, and we took out 3,000 points in that energy range, and that's what we use in our device. We put that purring of a cat back into the nervous system without having to deal with kitty litter and without having to deal with the craziness of some of our little feline friends. But that purring range, there is no doubt that it is harmonic and healing for so many reasons. And that's what we use as our primary energy. But we have done so much study, and we find that that purring harmonic range fits perfectly with all of the mathematical equations that give us the harmonics that help heal the entire universe. I mean,
Mm,
the solfeggio frequencies are caught within that harmonic range, all of them.
yeah.
And and the healing range that we find that will speed up fractures healing is in that harmonic range. And so I have become more and more fascinated with Nikola Tesla and some of these great thinkers as I realized how right on they were.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that
The,
you brought up the solfeggio frequencies. Like I remember learning a little bit about that a while back and it's not top of mind now. And I also really wish I would have like done some research on the cat purr because it's funny when my mom showed me this, the Resimax initially, I was like, oh, okay, it vibrates. Okay, wait a minute. And I thought, I was like, this is like a cat purr. And she's like, I don't know if they had told her that or not, but because I think, isn't it true that cat purring, I'm thinking like ancient Egyptians, like bone healing, or like there's some real facts about that. Could you speak a little bit more about the cat purr and why that's helpful and healing?
oh, you bet. You know, some of this came from a conversation that I had with my friend Dr. Jones, who's been a veterinarian for 30 some odd years. And I was talking to him one day and I said, I'm realizing that the vocal cords play a very important part in healing. And I've been trying to figure out some things about the purring of a cat because I've looked online and I can see that, in fact, I had a classmate that had severe panic attacks,
Mm.
and she had a cat that was her therapy cat.
Mm.
And I said, "How does this work?" She says, "Well, when I'm in a panic attack, my cat will come and glue itself to my chest and purr and purr and purr until I come out of a panic attack." And I got thinking about that. And then I asked my friend, Dr. Jones, I said, "What's the difference between dogs and cats?" He says, over my career, I've treated over 1,000 dogs with all kinds of ailments and cancers of all kinds. He says dogs don't quite have the same healing mechanism that cats do. He says, over my career, I can count probably on one hand the number of cats that I've treated for severe cancers. And he said it must have something to do with that purring mechanism. Well, as I studied and further, I came to understand one of the fascinating things about the vagus nerve is that it is responsible for your vocal cords.
Really?
The recurrent laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve is responsible for vocalization.
That's fascinating.
So when you start putting all of that together, that's what we found was that we can create a device that is on that cat purring harmonic range, and we even, I don't know if we showed you, but our newest device actually has a cat look to it. Our
Yeah,
engineer did that, but he
that's
said,
great.
if you've got that harmonic in there, we might as well put the face on there.
That's great. Oh, like reminds me of Felix, the cat Felix.
But what we found was that we can have a person hum. You might call it your own purr that you can create, and we put the harmonics of the cat and your own purr, and we create a meshing of energies, if you will. And it's resonant frequencies. These are there's lots of ways to explain this, but if you look at it simply in sound, it's using frequencies and pulling them together to create a stronger mechanism. It's kind of like putting several voices together. We create a stronger choir,
Yeah.
or several instruments together. We create these harmonics. So
Hmm.
that's what we found helps people heal, and it's all related to that vagus nerve.
That's awesome. That's why more evidence that I should be singing around my house all day. And another thing that I learned in the advanced course and the videos that I've been watching on Rezzimax is putting your tongue in between your teeth when you're using it. That's that purr that you're talking about, that your own purr.
It is your own purr, but there's another factor that helps with this. And you'll see in yoga and a lot of things that putting your tongue against the top of your mouth or against the back of your front teeth is really helpful in the positioning there. The reason we go past the teeth is that there is another cranial nerve. It's the fifth cranial nerve, called the trigeminal nerve.
Okay.
And that trigeminal nerve and the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve and the 5th cranial nerve, they're like opposites on a seesaw. So when one is fired up, the other one can't work very good.
Mm.
When the other is fired up, the other is kind of resting and calming. So essentially what we do is we calm down the trigeminal system and we fire up the vagus system to get a person into that calm, healing, happy state.
Mm.
Well, here's where we get really fascinating. You see, two of the major nerves to your tongue are the vagus and the trigeminal nerve. Well, take this thinking a little bit further. If you bite down on your tongue, your brain gets an instant message back to it saying, I'm going to lose the tongue. Don't bite down on that. Well, that opening or that calming message that it sends back to all of the muscles around here tells them, let's calm that trigeminal system down. You see, because the trigeminal system is also involved in the clench.
That's the TMJ,
The
trigeminal. Yeah.
TMJ, the masseter, and the temporalis, and all those muscles involved there. So, on one hand, the trigeminal nerve is wanting to clamp down, and on the other hand, the brain is saying, don't clamp down. I don't want to lose the tip of your tongue. And so that message creates this cool space that, along with humming, tells the brain, calm down the trigeminal system. Let's improve the functioning of cranial nerve 10, the vagus system.
Mm.
And it's just this neat little sequence of events in the brain that start calming the heart rate, start improving the breathing, start calming the systems and getting the rest and digest up into gear.
It
So
makes me think, sorry to interrupt you, but it makes me think about how if someone is sick, that they might moan, that they might,
exactly.
have that kind of like that exhale, that moaning, that noise of, because your body's telling you to do that for this regulation you're talking about.
Exactly. Your deepest part of your brain that you don't use for thinking very much is telling you, I need to survive.
Hmm.
And that survival, we have found that the basic body instinct is to try and produce some sound which elevates or strengthens that vagus nerve tone to help us get through our trial.
Wow, that is so much to say here. But I mean, I do know that as I've gone through the advanced course, I've seen some amazing like healing stories. Like for one, there was a man who was almost done with life in and of itself. He was in chronic pain for so long. He said, "Let me just hold out, try the Rezzimax somehow." By God introduced it to him. He was made aware of it, and then he changed his mind. Basically, I saw that story, and then another one that I remember is seeing a woman who had those physical tremors on one side of her body, and you working with her through the course, the seminar, whatever it was that you were in there. And as you worked for some time, then she calmed down and she wasn't tremoring anymore. So those are just two off the top of my head that I remember from going through some of the videos and coursework. But is there a new one or another one? I love a good story. So, someone who's really had some great success resolving an issue with Resimax that you could share.
Goodness, we have so many of those. But one recently that has me fascinated is taking a friend of mine who's had two brain surgeries through these techniques. And after these surgeries, one of them affected his optic nerve and all of the muscles of his eye quite a bit because he had this tumor wrapped around those structures. And so there's some damage done. Anyway, for 4 years now, he's had double vision.
Mm,
He's had a difficult time with, they had built some prisms for his lenses to try and, stabilize his eyes a little bit, but he couldn't reach down low like to his shoes without feeling like he's going to pass out and his world starts spinning. And well, this just affects so many things. And in my world, we call that dysautonomia.
mm,
When the autonomic nervous system, the one you don't think about, which is controlled by the vagus system, by the way, when it is so thrown off balance that your world is never, you're never sure you're in the same room with your body. The Anyway, what we did in his particular case was we showed him how to get the abdominal system with all of the organs down there connected to that whole vagus system.
mm.
We taught him how to do some exercises with his mouth, his tongue, his eyes, and and scraping the entire body using the wings on the device
Yeah.
for scraping the body from the tips of the toes and the tips of the fingers all the way up. And the reason that we do this is when we've had some of these really hard impacts on the brain kind of loses awareness of where all the parts and pieces are.
Mm.
If you've ever been really sick and just realize you're kind of walking around in a cloud, you don't really feel and sense things like you normally should.
Yeah.
That's what happens is this disconnect. So we have him spend 15, 20 minutes a day scraping from his tips of his fingers all the way up and his toes all the way up and doing some work on his abdominal region where he's just reconnecting the communication pathways from the brain all the way down. And and we have him using our little mouthpiece and doing some exercises with his tongue and his eyes. And anyway, a combination of that. And I was just talking to him yesterday and I said, how are you doing? He said, you showed me these things 3 weeks ago and my life is completely changed.
Wow. What a rewarding feeling.
Oh my goodness. Just knowing that he has had such a hard time because of the impact. And I've watched him go through two brain surgeries now, or to try and remove this tumor and go through the chemo, go through all this stuff. It's left neuropathy, it's left ringing in the ears, it's left all of these things that just make life not quite as fun.
Yeah.
And to be able to teach him how to get the sense of taste and smell back online, get the ringing out of the ears, and get all of these organs connected. And now he says I can get down on the floor and I can do stuff and I can get up and my world's not spinning. And the biggest thing he noticed was he doesn't like putting his prism glasses on anymore because now his eyes are straining to try and look through the prism instead of the way that God intended them to be.
Wow, that is awesome. Oh goodness. So much how your life can be just put in an upheaval when you have some of these things go on. I know another story that's coming to mind now is the man who had, so I think Crohn's disease, some really problematic just digestion issues. And because leaky gut is just, on the rise, everyone's having gut issues. That was a severe case where he had used the Rezzimax to help him with Crohn's, having had some of his colon removed. I mean, very severe. So it makes me think about all these people that are running around with leaky gut. They don't know it perhaps, or now they're just starting to get the digestive problems. And, that's a trigger point for me, or, it's something I've personally dealt with as far as having certain gut issues. And again, the chiropractor that introduced this to me, one of the suggestions was, hey, you can use this on your gallbladder. And then kind of going through the coursework and looking at all the different things you have listed for the recipes, which I think is really cute title for all the recipes of ways to use the Rezzimax. But could you name, I mean, there's a whole list of them people can check on the website, but from addiction to like gallbladder, like I said, to vertigo, which is a very tricky thing to deal with. And like you said, the ocular nerve. I mean, there's just so many things that the Rezzimax can be used to. Maybe could you speak to that, the breadth of all the conditions of how people can use this?
You bet. And Kiri, can I mention one important thing
Please.
that research just came out? It was published in the journal Oral and Facial Pain and Headache, and just came out on the use of the Rezzimax tool for treating chronic, unrelenting cluster headaches, very painful headaches. Anyway, we have great success using it, research backed finally. It takes a while to get through all these studies. But our second study, that is also under peer review right now, and hopefully we'll see it published this year. But it's all about dysmenorrhea, or everything happening on the lower side of the abdomen, especially for our females
Hmm.
that suffer in silence
Yeah.
throughout the world. Anyway, those two research studies show some really unique things. Number one, um, we are effective on getting the lower side working and getting the upper side working. But more than that, we see tremendous benefits for peripheral neuropathy, which is clear out to the fingertips and the toes. And we see tremendous benefits for every kind of orthopedic condition that you can imagine, including low back pain, sciatica. We have all kinds of improvements being seen for head and neck issues, TMJ. In fact, a third study is currently underway right now, and it's studying TMJ, TMD at a dental school, and some of our treatments are being analyzed there. Um, we love seeing this thing be able to help from chronic conditions like Crohn's you mentioned, but also MS and
Hmm.
Parkinson's and so many chronic diseases that are central nervous system related and
Yeah.
brain related. And we're seeing those change chronic strokes and paralysis and you name it, we have found it effective. But why is it effective? It doesn't treat those specific issues. It's not like going diagnosis by diagnosis and we're going to fight those. It's all about improving the efficiency of that vagus nerve system. Your body, my body, our bodies are designed to heal from almost everything, but you've got to give them the right foundation, the good nutrition, the good rest and digest, the proper sunlight ratio. All of these things are really important, but they won't work unless you get that vagus nerve functioning better.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think that's another reason why I really liked what you're all about with Rezzimax is because it's something we've sort of been banging the drum on for a long time. It's like the thinking needs to change first. And that's something else I noticed in the training where you said, the Rezzimax isn't for using it like an aspirin, like, oh, I have a headache, let me run to the Rezzimax. Not that you can't use it that way, but really, this is something like you said earlier, you're retraining your body, you're retuning your body. So you have to think about healing, health and healing as, making sure you're getting all those foundational elements along with having this as a brief protocol and daily when especially when you're treating something that you've struggled with for a long time.
That is so true, Curie. I think that's probably one of the funnest things that we have seen with people. Like my friend that's been dealing with this for 4 years, we have people with MS that have been dealing with it for 30 years plus. And to see it make such an improvement for them, it just warms our hearts.
Mhm.
It just, I mean, that's the reason that we're here is to help people with those chronic issues be able to have some sense of hope again
Yeah.
and be able to function better.
Which is really important, especially when you've been suffering with something for that many years 10, 20, 30 years. And with chronic disease, as you well know, there's not a lot of answers out there, which is why I think functional medicine, holistic, integrative, whatever you want to call it, is really exploding now because it's so needed with everyone struggling with these chronic issues. And one of those chronic issues is autoimmune, right? This autoimmune disease of a variety of types out there from Hashimoto's to, oh, I don't know, there's the list goes on. But I also remember running across a little soundbite, I think, in the training about everyone who has autoimmune should have this. So could you speak a little bit as to why?
Well, it goes back to an autoimmune disease exists because your vagus nerve is not functioning well.
Hmm.
So it goes back to our basics. Essentially, if the vagus nerve is doing its job, the rest and digest is occurring, the lymphatic system is being regulated, so it's pulling out billions of chronic bad cells, precancerous cells. It's pulling those out on a regular basis. It's not getting overwhelmed. You know, the root of disease has been said to be the stress response. Well, the vagus nerve and all of its functions are there to get you out of the stress response and to help you to heal. So when we are talking about autoimmune issues, it means that a person has had poor functioning of the vagus system for a long enough period of time that it has allowed disease to come to a epidemic state in your nervous system, in your immune system. And so it's that overwhelm that we're working on. We're just simply trying to improve the function of the vagus nerve. And by doing that, we see a lot of autoimmune diseases go into remission. They just stop being a big blaring monster affecting that person once we get their nervous system calmed down.
Right.
And I recall specifically one case. A woman called us one day and she said, "I've been using your tuner for a year, and now I want to tell you a little bit about what it's done for me." She said, "I am on my 29th year since I was diagnosed with MS.
Yeah.
And every year I've watched my scans of my myelination, my nerves. I've watched the deterioration year after year after year until this year." She said, "I finally have my first scan after using your device for an entire year, and I can compare it this year to last year. I finally have 90% improvement in myelination in every system tested."
90%? Wow.
She says, "Here's what I'm noticing is that I've got energy to go and do the things that I want to do. My digestive system works better. I'm sleeping better. You know, we're not here as a treatment for MS. We're here to improve the functioning of your vagus nerve."
Yes.
And that's such an important distinction because any number of autoimmune diseases are very similar in that there's some aspect of the nervous system that they're targeting because the vagus nerve tone is not functioning in a way that protects the systems. It's the great protector.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point that the vagus nerve is the great protector. Yeah? Did I say that right?
You know, I'd never said it in that way until just now, but it gives me chills to think of it as that way. That is what its job is to do. It's to protect and help every organ and everything function better to keep you enjoying and experiencing a full life. That's its job.
I love that. Well, first, I love that you're breaking news right here. So this is another note I made, and it may be some overlap here, but I wanted to ask you about viruses. I recently wrote a blog about the Epstein-Barr virus because it's such a common virus. I'm like 90% of people out there have it, and maybe you don't know you have it because it's not activated, but maybe you'll have a flare up, and it's just such a common virus that people have. But for those that have had a reactivation of something like that, I'm assuming obviously the Rezzimax would help. And have you had that experience where you've heard from someone that's worked with it who has specifically had Epstein-Barr?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things with Epstein-Barr is the chronic fatigue. And again, it's not that we're going to try and fight a virus, but your immune system, when it's functioning as God intended it to, fights off all kinds of viruses and bad guys that are in there trying to do harm. It knows how to fight off funguses and molds, and your nervous system, when it's functioning well, takes care of all of that. The reason people have flare ups is because they go through something really hard. Maybe they've had a fender bender, maybe they've had a rough spot in their marriage, maybe, you know, people made fun of them or something, and their nervous system is kind of crashing.
Mm-hmm.
When our nervous system is not functioning optimally, then Epstein-Barr or mold, funguses, or little critters that are running up and down inside of our GI system, they go ballistic
Have a party.
because that vagus nerve is not, it's overwhelmed. When the vagus nerve is overwhelmed, that's when we get the ringing in the ears. That's when we get this sense of disconnect when we stand up and feel like we're going to pass out. And all of those are signs that the vagus nerve tone or the vagus nerve functioning is not what it needs to be. But it's, again, it's, you know, we might do a lab test and see that your Epstein-Barr is through the roof. That just means that your vagus nerve is overwhelmed and it's not functioning well enough to put that all into remission. Can I give you another personal
Please.
example?
I love those. Yeah.
What is shingles?
Chickenpox.
It's chickenpox. It's inside all of us. And when does it come out?
Stress.
For me, I have one of the worst kinds of that chickenpox virus coming back out again. I have it through this distribution, which is my trigeminal distribution on my dominant right side. Now, tells you that I don't want to be spending my life in a lot of stress, because
Right.
when that comes out, it goes, you know, shoots into the eye a little bit. I start getting these sores break out. I start getting a lot of chronic pain breaking out when I'm starting into that breakdown mode. And I have seen it now probably 4 or 5 times in my adult life that when I'm under a severe amount of stress, moving, selling,
Yes.
business, doing, or loss of a close family member, or something that's really, really hard, I will immediately start having shingles pop out on that side of me again. And that's one of the reasons I love this tool. I know how to stop it as soon as it starts,
So if you,
because
I feel, yeah.
I start back using my mouthpiece, I start using the tools, and within a day, my shingles is turned off completely.
Wow,
It's
that's
still
amazing.
in there, but when my vagus nerve is functioning well, it's not a concern.
So really what the Rezzimax is helping people do is empower their great protector.
Oh, I love that. I feel like that needs to be copyrighted and send out to the world. That's
Right.
a beautiful way of saying that.
Because I like that you keep, you have to keep reiterating this so that we get it stuck, as far as it's not that this tool or anything really, you don't take something that just eliminates the problem. That's the thinking. It goes back to the thinking again. What you're doing is you're empowering your immune system, you're empowering your body to function optimally. And we don't have enough of these kinds of devices. I know from personal experience and over years of, walking beside my mom with her health journey and spending thousands and thousands of dollars on this and that and the other thing and this practitioner and this device and da 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 to find something like the Rezzimax that's so accessible for people, for individuals. Yes, it's being used in doctors' offices, but you can have this to use at home and to empower yourself to help that healing response continue to happen and grow. And I think it's super powerful.
Well, it's life-changing.
Yeah.
But Carrie, you've had one now for a few weeks. Tell me what your experience has been.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I struggle with is food sensitivities. And I recently ate something that really had a profound impact on me. And then I later looked up one of the ingredients, and I believe I had an allergic reaction. I believe that's what happened. And one of the indicators was it said low blood pressure. It could cause low blood pressure. And the incident that I had was I actually fell. Like I fell down, so my blood pressure, I believe, dropped really low. I lost control. It's never happened in my life. It was very scary. And I fell. And so I came home. I had some digestive issues, as you can imagine, from eating something you shouldn't eat. But what happens to me is that I get sort of like my nervous system, I can feel it. Can get shaky. I can get hot and cold. So I reached for the Rezzimax, and I noticed right away that it calmed me down. And I don't say this like to describe it to people. It's not as though I'm on the outside acting up or excitable. It's coming from inside. It's like I can tell. That's why I say it's my nervous system is jacked up beyond belief. I'm shaking outwardly because of this freak out my body is having. So when I grabbed the tuner at that night and just held on to it, I could feel like I still had stomach issues going on, but like from the inside, it calmed me down. And so I was able to rest, as to where in other instances where similar type of things had happened from eating the wrong thing, there's nothing I could do, you know.
You know what's neat about that, Carrie, is that calming down of your central nervous system, if we put it back into those pure anatomical connections, what that did was allow your vagus nerve to improve its ability to start affecting your organs. And so, number one, it calmed down that hyperactivity, which is the allergic response. It calmed down all those soldiers that were standing guard, that were kicking you into that upregulated state. It calmed them down and allowed your organs to start processing and getting rid of the toxins and getting rid of the gunk that it had introduced. So
Yes.
instead of escalating into a full-blown panic and freak out mode that could have affected you for months on end, it reminded your system, here's how we're supposed to work. Let's all work together. We improve the function of that vagus system. It's the one that takes care of the allergic response.
Mm.
It's the system that calms down all those explosive products that are hitting you,
Yeah.
and it helps the immune system get rid of all of those extra bad players that you introduced into the system.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty amazing that how at the level I could feel of the relaxation. And also, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes I will have a overactive mind at night when I try to go to bed. I'm not always perfect on wearing my blue blockers before bed, and maybe I have too much screen time. But I have noticed when I put the Rezzimax, against my body as I go to sleep, that has really helped me fall to sleep faster.
And are you noticing that well, do you notice that when you wake up the next day, you're in a better state than the normal when you wake up?
It's
It's like,
funny.
wow, the rest and digest actually happened during the night this
Yeah.
time.
It's funny that you say that. I think initially, like one of the first few times I used it like that to fall asleep, I said to my mom the next day, I don't know, but I feel happier today.
You know, that statement is beautiful. Let me explain it to you in anatomical connections.
Yeah.
When the vagus nerve is functioning well, it opens up the rest and digest system. It opens up the factory doors during the nighttime.
Hmm.
It doesn't do it when you're in the day working through everything. It kind of shuts those processes down so they don't function unless you get into a good restive state.
Yeah.
Well, one of the number one things that is produced in the digestive system, especially in the lining of the stomach, is a substance called serotonin.
Yeah.
90% of your serotonin is created in the lining of your stomach and GI system, your upper intestines, and 10% of it is created in the brain. So we
Hmm.
use this brain stuff to keep all the brain functions happier. We keep the rest of the serotonin running through the body to keep the rest of the systems working better. And guess what? We see a happier person when the serotonin levels are functioning normally. What
Yeah.
do we see when they're not working normally? We see people going to the doctors saying, "Can I please get in on an antidepressant, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor?" It goes back to
Yeah.
this whole thing of when the factory doors are open, when resting is occurring, we're producing what the body naturally wants to help us heal from all the other things of the world.
Yeah, I mean, sleeping is so crucial to optimal health. I mean, if you go up without sleep for a period of time, you can literally lose your mind. So this is a very serious thing. I'd say anybody that has, I mean, is this an overstatement for me to say anybody who has any sleeping issues should have a Rezzimax?
I don't think that it's a bad statement at all. People need to know that this is out there and that it can help them regulate sleep.
Yeah.
That's why we put the Z's in our name, is because we wanted you to know that when you improve functioning of the vagus nerve, improved sleep is one of the first things you should experience.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned serotonin and that makes me think of emotions, another thing I picked up along the way in studying up on this a little bit is that you were in talks with Dr. Bradley Nelson, the emotion code guy, right? That's how I call him. He's the emotion code guy to me. And this is a book that I was introduced to years ago now, and I worked with a practitioner on it a little bit, but I was fascinated by the ability to, help regulate your emotions better and create resilience. Again, those resilience resis, right? Like, I love that connection to emotional resilience with the Rezzimax. So could you speak to a little bit of that?
You bet. I remember very well meeting Dr. Bradley at a Dr. Nilsson at a conference. We were both speakers at it, and we sat down and had lunch and we were talking. And I said, "Okay, who are the individuals that have a hard time with the emotion code working on them?" Because at that time in our early years, we still had some individuals that our tools didn't work really well on yet. He said, "Well, it works a lot better on females than it does on males." I said, "Huh, that's interesting because a lot of our tools have had the same thing. We are more effective on the female nervous system than the male nervous system." Oh my gosh, that conversation had me searching for a long time, trying to figure out what those differences were between the men and the women. I mean, we could go on and on and on here, but what we came to understand, and maybe I'll go back to that another time, but what we understood was this. The female nervous system is much more sensitive than the male nervous system. And it has to do with the way our brains work. Our women have 9.5 times more white matter in their brain, which means they have the ability to process way more information than the men have. Now, our
Mm.
brains weigh about the same, but males have 6.5 times more gray matter. So we have a slower processing thinking than our female counterparts do.
Wow, that explains so much.
And that's part of it is in this day and age when so much is coming at us, the male brain can tune a bunch of it out. The female brain cannot.
Interesting. Wow.
So we think of our females typically as better multitaskers. It's just simply that they can process a whole lot more information than our males can. And our males are a slower thinking, processing, that's the way our brain and nervous system works.
Yeah.
Um, so some of these differences create the reasons why we see a lot more chronic diseases in our females, such as migraine headaches, much more in females than males. Fibromyalgia,
Yes.
like 90% or nine times more likely to occur in a female than a male. MS, you name it. There's lots of diseases that affect our females a whole lot more than our males. And then there are some conditions that affect our males a whole lot more than our females, the Parkinson's and some of these other chronic and of course brain injuries. And there are so many differences. Well, we have figured out how to affect both the male and the female, but it's taken time. Some of that goes back to some of these original conversations like I had with Dr. Nelson was, what are those differences and why? Well, we have figured out how to make that emotional connection and the physical connection be able to help affect healing for both men
Mm,
and women. But I
great.
think it's taken time to come to an understanding of that because years ago, the typical migraine headache that came into the clinic, I wanted to run and hide. I didn't know how to help that. Now we've learned just improve the function of the vagus nerve, get them into a calm rest and digest, and the symptoms of the headache just disappear.
Mm,
And now we see that with our research. I mean, it's what happens.
yeah.
But years ago, we didn't completely understand that. It's come in
Yeah.
time.
So do you think that the Rezzimax then can help men and women, of course, because of that connection to the vagus nerve?
Absolutely. And in part, it's because it's healing the connections of emotional trauma that most of us have to go through multiple forms of that throughout our life. It's part of experiencing our life.
Part of being human, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are others like me that got dumped on their head when they were two, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I know I've seen lots of babies like this, so with their head to the side and probably for a variety of reasons. But yeah, the trauma thing is nothing, you can't escape that as a living a human life here, and that's why one of the many reasons why this device is so, I think, going to help so many people. It already has. I know that you've been at the research and development side for some 15 years or more, perhaps, but how long has Rezzimax been out there in getting exposure and people becoming aware of it and using it?
Well, I first woke up with the concepts that became Rezzimax in 2000 or 2010, 2010. So it's been 15 years since I very first came to understand the importance of vibration. And so in the world of Rezzimax, we've got now 15 years that we've been trying to figure out all of the components of how to get these resonant frequencies to help the nervous system function at its best. What we found along the way are that we can combine it with amazing light energies and electrical energies and other forms. We're learning more about Tesla's statement than we understood years and years ago.
Wow.
But we're finding out how to use these tools in combination to affect the healing of just about every condition. And they are going back to energies as the form of communication with the central nervous system. It's how it all works. Nothing in this system works by magic.
Yes.
It
Oh,
follows these very important laws.
Love it. I love it. There's so much more I'm sure we could talk about, Sharik, but I always like to ask people before we close, is there anything else that's new, top of mind, something that we missed that you might want to mention?
Oh my goodness, we talked over quite a few things. I think that probably the most important message that we could leave people with is the hope. The hope. You might have heard about our machine and our device and our invention, but most people don't have enough hope that something can work because they've tried so many things that didn't work.
Hmm.
And if I can give people one thing, it would be the hope to try it. And if they try it, they'll find out pretty quickly if it's going to help them. I like to say, our devices are not super cheap. We make them right here in the United States, and it takes a lot of work to make them. And it's about $600 for one of our kits. But you're going to know within 4 to 6 weeks if it's going to be a huge help for you. And you're at about that point. Is it a big help
Yeah,
for you? You either
absolutely.
know or
Yeah,
don't know, right?
absolutely a big help, and I don't want to go without it. I have to make sure it's charged.
Well, and we give people in 8 weeks to try this thing thoroughly. If it doesn't work for you, we'll buy it back. We have had that in place for now 8 years since we've been creating our devices here in the US. And during that time, and nearly 20,000 of our devices are out in the world helping people, we have less than a 2% of people that take us up on that 100% money back guarantee.
Wow.
98% of people keep these. And again, it's not cheap, but they keep them because it's helping them in some great way.
Yeah.
And for those that it doesn't help, we have no problem refunding that. Send it back to us. We'll find another person that can use it. And we're
Yeah.
grateful for that. I don't know of any other thing that's got that kind of a guarantee that has that kind of a success rate, and we are so proud of that.
Yes, I would.
Happy to help.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you said that about the hope, and you do have to have faith in continuing to try again. That can be difficult after, especially if you've had a long journey that you've been on. But I would just echo that and say, yeah, have hope and have faith, and give this a try. And although and I love, by the way, that it's made in the U.S. I know you had a whole journey as to how you got to get that going here, manufacturing here, but I think that's another bonus, another great thing. And while it's not cheap, as you say, I'd say it's very accessible, especially in comparison with lots of other things that I've been aware of over the years. I mean, we're talking $10,000 devices. So when you say 600, I think that's very, very accessible for many, many people.
That's our goal.
Yes.
That's our desire. We want to help families.
Yes, get it out to many people, and I'm just happy to be able to help echo the message. I want to be respectful of your time. I know as a CEO and business owner, I'm sure you've got things to do and places to go and people to talk to. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. Sharik, I really appreciate you and glad we met.
Thank you.
And for everyone else listening, I just want to say stay happy and stay healthy, and I'll see you on the next one. Psst, can you do me a favor? Text the link to this episode to a friend who you know needs to hear this. By doing so, you are helping me with my mission to open minds to all the holistic health solutions that are available to us all. We hope you'll support our small business and shop ngvitamins.com for all your supplement needs. Oh, and don't forget to hit the bell on your platform of choice so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed this show, please consider sharing your review on iTunes. Until next time.